dollar bill, yo.
Okay, so we're going to do a month roundup for all of the changes we put in the last month, and a lot of you guys don't normally get to see behind the velvet rope for what we do and why we do it, and we're going to talk about why we made some of the changes as we go through the entire block of patch notes for the last month. So it should be interesting for those of you who don't know why we do things. You just read patch notes and you gloss over them and you're like, what the hell is that?
Why would they ever do that?
Why would they do that? And we have a reason. So we're going to explain some of those reasons as we go through it. You guys might find it interesting. So we're going to go through the patch notes, starting with the beginning of the month. Welcome to 5.0. So the very first one was new lighting, along with experimental settings. Graphics has been added to Crowfall. And
this
that
was May 17th.
May
17th.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, because the first, I don't think we had an update, because we were all spooling up to the big reveal.
Right.
So it basically started at the middle of the month was all of the new stuff. So we had the new lighting, updates made to shadow reflections, changes to character lighting have been added. I know this one the art team keeps tweaking, and they have to tweak it one character at a time, which is why some of the characters right now have a kind of zombie green.
Yeah, they just don't look correct.
Yeah. So they're tuning those one at a time. I think they started with the champion, which is why he looks the best. And the knight has his dead eyes.
Yeah.
And it's green. It's a very tinge, but I mean, it'll go away, obviously. They just have to manually tune those things one at a time with the new lighting model.
Yep.
I mean, you build 2 years of stuff, you completely change the lighting model, things are going to be off. All right, statistics. Updated stat caps on resource cost to negative 0.6. Weaponry cost to negative 0.2. Added a base positive 0.75 resource to all advanced weapons. Okay, so this is the basis of the weapon efficiency system. So this is us making weapons have a stat that matters other than damage, right? That was basically in the earlier builds, the only thing that mattered anytime you made a weapon was damage, 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 damage. Now we've added the resource cost, which acts as a multiplier on the cost of all powers you do, and you can make it, you can tweak that stat on your crafted weapons and make them very efficient, or you can choose to ignore that stat, and there's a variety of reasons why you would. And that being, we gave you a passive that you can load out to reduce that cost, or you're running with a group mate who is generating a lot of resources, or you're playing a build that is basically a no-spend build. So with a couple of the new disciplines, Bard and Troubadour come to mind. If you were to combine both of those majors, you would basically have a no-spend build. You'd be sitting there twisting songs. However, you really wouldn't need to worry about resource cost. Or you play one of the 3 classes that don't. So Assassin, Duelist, or Templar, they don't have to worry about it because they're pip users, and the resource efficiency doesn't affect them in any way. Same with, it doesn't affect Essence either, does it?
No, it does.
Oh, it does? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess your Essence gain will be affected by... Okay, so I guess Druids have to play the Essence, or the resource efficiency game as well. So for crafters, this is great because it means that you can specialize in one type of weapon or the other type of weapon. We're still looking at putting a third major stat on there, haste, in the future. We start to investigate that, which will speed up the playback of the animations and give you yet another major stat to look on weapons. I mean, and basically this is all about giving crafters a lot of choices in what they build, as well as their customers who will want, hey, I'm looking for a weapon that does this. And that's all about making fun and interesting items rather than just, hey, if we had one stat, it would be damage, and it would be like, if it doesn't make this threshold, it's crap.
Right.
And if it's crap, nobody wants to buy it, and it kind of really sucks. So this will give the weapon crafters a way to specialize. Added new Plentiful Harvesting rating stats, which feed into the Plentiful Harvesting stat. Updated skill trees to grant the ratings. Updated quarrying, logging, and skinning passives to use these as ratings. So this was all about those new passives that I built. And basically, if you think about the way our stat system works, is we have parent stats that feed into other stats. So we can create a lot of feeder stats that go to this stat and master stats, and these master stats are used by the game functions. But we can create end chains of other stats that feed into those. And now that our stat caps are functional, which means we can say the max that you can have this stat go to is 3. So even if they get buffed beyond 3 via any other way, it's going to chop it at 3. Now we can make the stat that it feeds into cap at 5, but the contribution from this particular stat could cap at 3. So we can have multiple things there that feed into a stat that have their own stat caps as kind of a way to prevent horrible catastrophes, which we've been pretty good at. Like one of the things I'm happy.
I mean, the thing is, stuff does happen once in a while, right?
Sure.
And it doesn't take too many catastrophically bad bugs to completely ruin the play experience for everybody, really.
Right.
And so caps really help that a lot.
Yeah, we haven't seen any one-hit kills on live with all the disciplines, which is something that I'm really happy with, which meant that we would have obviously done just something we didn't think about. So we haven't seen those. So
Or like divided things by 10.
Ooh, or we haven't seen any super invulnerable players outside of Punch Drunk.
Yeah.
Which is my fault, but we knew that there was going to be those.
There's going to be those.
There's going to be those. I mean, we introduced 300 plus powers. There's going to be some wacky busted ones in the beginning. Healing powers min-max now use only support power for base healing values. So let's talk about that one for a second, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah. So as a way to basically sort of balance things and make our support classes stronger, more supporty, we've more or less removed the contribution, because up till this point, attack power fed into just your base weapon power damage fed into your healing abilities. So we removed that for everybody. So for the time being, right now, healing's a little lower than, and obviously you guys have noticed this, but healing's a little lower than it's going to be. But basically, so more or less everybody's experiencing what healing's going to be for a non-healing class.
Right.
So what that basically means, though, is we're going to be buffing the support power contribution for like Cleric and Druid. So essentially, basically, this is a way to make the healing classes better at healing. And if you are not a healing class, you're just not going to heal as well unless you devote parts of your build and your skill and whatever to basically make sacrifices to do that.
Well, you could gear that way too, right?
Or you could gear, exactly.
Right. If you want a crafted set that focuses on support power and you're a knight, you can totally do that with this system.
Right, and that would be at the cost of damage, right? So at this point, we're more or less going to force you to make a choice. Either you're going to be more, you're going to go for more damage, or going for actually support power,
or somewhere in the middle.
Or somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle, right? So, yeah, that was a big point. Was when we went into this with all these disciplines, the attack guys were just as good as the support guys at healing, and you may still see remnants of that because we haven't given support power out in enough quantity in the skill trees.
And obviously, we're still going to be balancing it too, even at this point. It's just more or less we didn't want to rip off the Band-Aid too hard. It's like, we'll just leave it as is. It's going to be a little weak. We may have to lower it even more, or maybe go the other way and increase it even more.
But we weren't able to do that before this change,
right?
Because it was just taking your weapon and being like, okay, this is included in the calculation, and now it's not. Okay, damage powers use min-max plus weapon min-max. Okay, so this is basically saying the converse of that. Support powers only use support power to modify those powers. Damage powers use the weapon, the ammo value, attack power, and weapon damage min, weapon damage max, which are stats, and we grant those out in the skill trees, which is increases max weapon damage by 50, for example. So offensive powers use those.
Decreased crafting failure rate per Blair's request.
Yeah, so we decreased the rate of failures. I think I saw a chat on the forums where somebody's like, we failed to make an advanced weapon 23 times in a row, which I don't know about that. 23.
Don't make us check the logs.
Yeah, because we will check the logs because we can do
We'll
it.
call you out. No.
And, yeah, we'll post a picture. Make you feel bad.
Let's see. Added quarrying, skinning, logging, and mining boost passive powers, which set all bonus harvesting stats to 3 if they are under 3. So that's like the resource equivalent of, setting your minimum level harvesting stats, and that was sort of to replace the potions.
Correct? Yeah, the potions have outlived their that initial testing portion, so we don't need to keep the special testing ones in. These passives are designed to bump start the economy, I think is the best way to look at it, right? I mean, when the game goes into its final launch and we stop wiping, the economy needs to get going. I mean, it's like we need some paddles right? To get the economy going, get some goods and services going in there, and we can't do that with nothing. And be like, where's the weapons? Like, we don't have any resources. Where's the resources? Well, we have to wait X amount of time for our skills to get up there before we can get the quantities that we need. So this will give people a way at a cost to swap out a passive, because you only have limited passive slots, right? So with limited passive slots, it is costing you something. It's not going to be as trivial to swap those. There's going to be a cooldown put on those things. So it's not like, hey, I found a rock, let me swap to my passive. You are going to have a timeout. We haven't put the cooldown on swapping passives in and out yet, because, again, that is a little too powerful to do on the fly for everything. But that's the thing. We're going to keep experimenting with these things, and yeah, we need a way to get the economy going.
Right.
I mean, flat out, and we want to maintain the progression model we have. I think that's important too, because a lot of people are like, well, why don't you just make the base better? Well, then we wouldn't have a progression model, and there wouldn't be this whole good, and hey, look at all the stuff I make now because I've got 5 in this thing rather than 1 or 3 at a cost. The 3 comes at a cost. Remember, everything comes at a cost.
Sure. Created empty flask item as a recipe reagent. I think that is what it is.
Well, that was
Don't remember
for
what that's for.
fleshing out alchemy.
Okay, all right.
So alchemy before was just like, hey, 2 pieces of ore make you a potion. So it's actually Valerie starting to put in some of the things that you would need to make alchemy a thing.
New weapon recipes have been added, including one-handed hammer and hammerhead, one-handed axe, one-handed scimitar and curved blade, focus orb, and components. Please note that these items do not have visuals in the game yet, and this is a known issue.
Right. So again, we need to add a bunch of weapons for all the new masteries, and they will come online at the appearance will come online at some point. It'll be cool, but at least you guys can make them so you can test out those disciplines.
Functional stubs that work. So, new test discipline recipes are now available for major, minor, and weapon disciplines.
Yes.
That is what it sounds like.
It's all the disciplines.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Any recipe that we don't want you to make because that discipline isn't quite ready, we put a piece of unobtainium in there.
Right, and that's the next.
Oh, is it actually? Okay.
Next series
I want to just
jump
stress
ahead.
that.
Just go ahead. Go ahead. Right into it.
Just the unobtainium. Unobtainium is not a thing. If any of you have seen the movie Avatar, they use a thing called unobtainium. It literally means what it sounds like. It's unobtainable. It's just funny. I saw in chat somebody's like, "Where do I get unobtainium from?"
So
like, it's not a thing.
It's so good.
But it's so funny.
Okay, so updated display names. Let's see. Updated display names and some of the vessel recipes to now fit with the new races.
Yeah, so we basically changed all of the old archetype names. We're starting to do what we're calling the race class conversion, which is you will pick your class and then you'll pick your race. The old necromancy stuff still pointed to archetypes. So now you will make a vessel of a specific human or Nathari or Wood Elf or Minotaur. The crafting is still the same.
Yeah.
It just means if you want to make something better than a white quality vessel, there is now a progression path for you to make a purple or blue one. And Mark can tell you what those ones do because you set up all the stats on those things.
I sure did. They're just better, right? I mean, basically better quality is better stats, right? You're gonna have
stats,
better base attributes, which is gonna.
So that's important, attributes, because we don't give out attributes on everything.
Right. That's the only place you're gonna get them. Right there.
Is right there. So if you want higher base attributes, you're gonna either craft them or you're not gonna get them.
Yeah.
So there's also some loot drops, all the additive stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Right. All the coming from the NPCs, right?
Yep.
Things of that nature.
So the NPC loop, which is about to start coming back online, you will be able to kill them, and every now and then they're going to drop an eyeball. And I think we put in some enhanced lungs and hearts.
Yeah. There's all kinds of various viscera you can get to add to your to add to your.
Did I ever mention that we built that over Christmas? It was the most morbid Christmas
very
ever.
morbid Christmas.
Was I'm sitting here dealing with body parts, and I'm like, man.
All
all powers, player pools like health and items have had their stats reduced by a factor of 10, i.e., 2,530 is now 253. And it was just we brought the numbers down. We didn't feel they needed to be as big. You guys didn't want them as big. Again, this is an opinion thing. I think it looks good.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean.
It means, again, for us, we could have reduced it by even more, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
It's really just what looks good, what you guys like to see, basically.
Yeah.
when it comes down.
Unfortunately, the fly text doesn't look good yet, but it will look good once we get some fly text updates. Cooldowns across all powers have been standardized, except for Myrmidons, who are mainly gated by resource as opposed to cooldowns, except for Berserk. There are now discipline powers that offer substantial cooldown reduction to those wishing to explore this playstyle. So
Right.
yes,
And really, aside, even beyond Myrmidons, you could also say Assassin and Templar, the Pip and Duelist
the PIP users
are great.
are not gated as much by cooldowns as they are by
Because they have to go out and earn the resource, right? I
Right.
mean, you have to hit.
So yeah, so I mean, we've built all the classes to be different across the board for a long time now, and yeah, we wanted some gated by cooldown, some gated by resource, and then we put in basically Easter eggs into the discipline system where there are specific powers that can make funky builds. Like again, the punch drunk, even though it's being abused right now with Mana Shield, which
Well, it's being abused with everything, right? Because it's like you can
It is
more or
being
less,
abused with
every
Berserk
2
too.
seconds you can reset your cooldowns, Blair. That's the problem.
so anyways, we've already fixed
Yeah,
that.
it's already been fixed.
It's already been
A lot of-
fixed.
yeah.
But you guys finding those things and creating those builds is the magic, I think, of the discipline system, right? It really is. And we put in a whole lot of just powers that look random, but when combined with another one,
Yeah.
you can totally make some cool, funky things, which is what
Right.
we wanted to do with, and we've been talking about forever.
Yeah, and it's finally
finally
real,
here. It's finally
right?
a thing.
And-
Okay.
and actually, to just talk about also like why we actually did the cooldown changes was just simply because we had like some situations where this buff has lasts for 15 seconds and has a 15-second cooldown. This one lasts for 23 seconds, has a 23-second cooldown, and like we're at very or 12 seconds or 10 seconds. Right, so we just basically wanted to get things at a more normalized,
Right. Yeah, so
even keel, so to speak.
again, we're still not in what I would consider like an alpha state, right? We still have, it's just a lot of testing stuff.
Right.
So you're going to get a lot of stuff that we have just built to see if it works. We still always maintain the playability of live as best we can.
Right.
Again, because otherwise it just sucks to play, and we don't want to create an environment like that. But we test a lot of things. And at some point, we also need to just normalize things on how we want to push it to this. So this was a big effort into getting our numbers where we wanted to get them for the future, getting our cooldowns, getting our resource
Right.
costs where
It's
we
a little
want
bit of
them.
hardening, basically.
Yeah, basically, just
Just a little.
we took like the 100 grade sandpaper to it rather than like the real rough 5 grade that we've been using. So just kind of put everything in a line. Days now has its own tag. Increased slow reduction of days, reduce the base duration. Dazes do not qualify for while target has a movement speed reduction style of attacks, and change the stat mod from a flat bonus to a % bonus, which actually broke dazes.
Yeah.
So this one patch note is what was putting in the bug because we were using % of base rather than flat bonus in our stat mod system, which we fixed later.
Right.
But this was the line that broke it. But basically, dazes are shorter, more intense slows. And yeah, that was this line.
A few people have asked about how Punch Drunk was fixed.
So I put a cooldown on it, so it will only trigger once every 90 seconds or 2 minutes, something like that. So yeah, it's basically just to give it a rational cooldown.
Yeah, it wasn't a proc before, which the way it was built before, we didn't have a way to set an internal cooldown on it. Now we have it. We reworked it so you can set an internal cooldown on it.
Okay.
So and then we'll trigger. We'll tweak that.
Yeah,
as
I
long as-
mean, like exactly.
but it needed something.
Yeah.
Bearded Beck asked, and we've talked about this, but I guess to remind people who might not have seen it yet, what is the next class to come into testing?
The next class to come into testing is scheduled to be the Assassin. All her powers are built, but we're waiting on animations.
Yeah.
And that got sidelined for the race class split. That took higher priority. Basically, we need to break up the, obviously the archetypes into classes and races.
Right. So that could mean, would that actually mean that maybe Cleric would come before?
And it might mean
Possibly,
because we can go
because-
ahead and build the Cleric powers, which in fact, Cleric's designed, ready for us to build, and now we have all of our new toys. I think the Cleric is going to be our first archetype or class. Our first class that will require no new tech. And the engineers were like,
Yeah,
"Yay!"
we'll think. Are you kidding? We'll think of something.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the goal, to actually make it so we have enough Legos that we can build things without asking for engineering time. But I know some of the assassin, like double jump, was being worked on yesterday. So there are engineers making efforts on the movement, the glide, as well as the double jump. So efforts being made.
Okay. Talos Amaruil Dos, I hope I said that right, asked, what are plans within the next couple months for cooking and alchemy? Are we going to be basically crafting consumables? Are there any plans for that?
What are the plans? So definitely in the next few months, we're going to migrate out all of those old testing potions and make more expensive potions that you can sell that +1 is more of a reasonable value than the current plus like 5s and 10s in there that we've had in there for testing purposes. So alchemy will get fleshed out. I don't expect ever to see in-combat healing potions as a thing. Okay. We've all designed them to be out-of-combat healing potions. So alchemy is still useful, and it's just not an in-combat consumable.
Right. Then it becomes a requirement.
Yeah.
Right. It just becomes Potion City.
Yeah, and we didn't want to go there. And what was the other profession they asked about? Alchemy and
cooking and alchemy.
Cooking will get more stuff. As more NPCs come online, the spiders and all of that stuff, we are going to make new recipes.
Gotta have things to cook.
Gotta have things to cook. Food right now is limited to apples, and since most people have been playing on Bloodbath, it's not too much of a problem. But as the adventure loop comes online with Campaign World, and you're out there playing it more like an MMO rather than a deathmatch in a little 1x1 square, you're going to need those things.
Okay. Mr. Moneta asked, will the second pass review of skills, pass/review of skills, mean rearrangement of skills or changes to their effect, or just an adjustment of number values?
So when we go in there, we always change things around. I mean, if you look at the excuse me, the harvesting trees now compared to what they were, I substantially rearranged those things such that they weren't set up the way they were. So we obviously shuffle around, and generally what we try and do is use existing skills and move them rather than delete them. That way people don't lose the time that they've invested in them.
Force you to retrain or anything.
So we definitely are. We're aware of the time that some people have put in on these things, and we don't want to just pull that out from you because we wanted to make a change.
Not unnecessarily anyway. So.
But I anticipate a big pass still needs to be done on the combat stuff, because that hasn't been touched since. That was the first series of skills to go in.
Yep.
That obviously needs to be touched. And then as exploration features come online, then we need to add stuff and or shift things around.
Duranthal asked, attributes don't seem to contribute much to stats. Can you talk about how that system works?
So attributes contribute to whatever we want them to contribute to at whatever value.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, when vessel crafting went in, we made a quick pass on it. That's with classes coming online. That's something we're gonna revisit again. It makes, the idea is to make sure that these have a significant enough contribution to your character that it's an important part of what goes into your character, right? Like, you are not going to most of you, I think the serious ones of you, which I believe probably everybody in the stream, is not going to be satisfied with a white vessel, with the lowest quality vessel. You're going to want the highest quality.
Yeah, we need to bribe them with much better
Yeah.
blue and purple quality vessels that you have to go.
Right.
Right.
And part of this too is making sure that the attributes, fan out to enough stats that it makes a difference, right? And so a pass needs to be done with that as well, to make sure that there's a reason for you to want every stat, and for stats to basically cover as many bases as we can, which makes sense.
And now that we're bringing the racial disciplines online, we are going to add an attribute component to those as well, right? Just such that half giant and minotaur get an extra 25 strength from their racial discipline, where the wood elves don't get that. Right. So
I mean, the other part too is vessel crafting. I mean, you can't actually use the vessels you're making right now. So,
right.
I mean, obviously, so it's not really helping you.
You guys are playing with the base value white vessels,
which is
we definitely don't want to. But more importantly, we create what we call a stat budget, we create a budget for everything. And we say, okay, this is going to contribute 45% of your character's power over time.
Right. It's basically like a pie. Like how much of each system contributes to that piece of pie.
So we try and arbitrarily not go in there and add things. We basically, at the beginning, we've sliced up the pie and say, okay, you get 30% of your character's growth from attributes. Let's now slice the attributes into the 3 vectors we know they're going to come from. The necromancy vessel, and we added the new vector with the racial discipline, and then the class is going to have a skew on your attributes as well. So now we have to basically, amongst that, divide the smaller pie into its 3 components. And
right, and so a lot of this too is the tracks finally meeting and getting
Yeah.
all the systems online for you guys to even experience it. Because right now you really you have no really opportunity to experience the system because it's all baseline all the time. So
yep.
Dondagora asked, how do you see crafting working at launch? Will there be a mini game? How will disciplines affect crafting beyond success rates, if at all?
So the crafting and harvesting disciplines haven't been built yet because we never went and did the phase 2 of the crafting stuff yet, which is still in Borland's. In fact, crafting has been broken into phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Right now, we've completed phase 1. Phase 2 adds in the crafting station stuff. Phase 3 will be the factories and mass production, which we need to get to so you guys can mass produce based off of blueprints. So there are going to be some shifts along the way. I don't think we're going to substantially add a mini game in there. The mini game right now is more RPG based. It's you have these amount of points, you've used this quality of resources. Where do you want to put those points? And have you skilled up enough such that your rolls are really good that you shift into the amazing and great success ranges of them. So that's kind of more of the RPG mini game. It's not a like a Peggle or a bubble popper, whatever kind of mini game that I've seen many times before. Anyways,
Match 3.
Right. So there's a lot of questions about individual bug fixes on characters and abilities. I think it's just important to push out a reminder that a lot of systems have sort of crashed together at once, and there's going to be a lot of balancing and tuning that happens over time.
Right.
Something
Again,
to keep in mind too is just the cadence of our build system, right? The fact that, like for example, a lot of the bugs you guys were reporting from even last week were fixed before that build actually even went out. It's just that what's live is behind what's in what we call develop. So.
But I think more importantly, the way that we work on Monday, the design team goes through the forums and reads all of your stuff.
Watch the video.
And we watch videos. You come by my desk and I'm watching.
All we do all day is that and find the bugs and fix them, basically.
We find the bugs and we fix them. If we don't want to spend 5 days fixing bugs, though, because we have to continue to make forward progress on the rest of the game. Right. Otherwise, we would never finish the game. So Monday and Tuesday, if we can get all of the big bugs that we identified, design fixed, and some pushed over to engineering because we need an engineering fix, then we do that. Those bugs get into the build system, and ideally by Wednesday, we have a good build for the weekend. Thursday, we're kind of pushing it. Friday, it's rough. And if we don't make that window, all of the fixes we made for that week get bumped into the next week. So it's not just us fixing things, it's making it through the build pipeline, which is compiling the code, making the patcher stuff. And if somebody else happened to have checked in something that broke the build, which is kind of a sin in our world, but it happens all the time, we just can't push that build out because there's something catastrophic preventing you from playing. And we always want to give you something playable because it would be no fun to log in and all of a sudden. Remember when we pushed out everyone has 7 health or 13 health, right? When we did the stat revamp, right? We didn't catch it internally because we didn't have the same test conditions set up as you guys. But that kind of thing would prevent us from pushing new code live because we don't want to put you guys into an unplayable state. So sometimes it may be 1, 2, 3 weeks if we have really unlucky builds before you guys see changes. But we're always making changes. We're watching the forums, we're watching the videos, and fixing things as fast as possible. And then sometimes those fixes don't do what we want them to do, so we have to go back and fix it or change something in a way that it will make sense. So there's lots of iteration going on, and you're going to see this all the way from here to forever.
Yeah,
That's how a live game works.
basically.
Right? We try and get you guys as fixed as possible. And I understand from a player, it's really irritating. Like Durenthal got on my back. For like 3 weeks, something wasn't fixed with the night resource cost. We'd fixed it right away. It was just like, it just
isn't live yet.
It didn't make it to the live process. So it happens. And you guys should get used to that now, having seen this enough that that's how things work.
And on that note, can we start with, we're going to move out of Q&A. I'm going to turn off the followers only chat. And then can we just give an overview of some of the things that
Can Tinnis have a call out? Sure. Hi, Tinnis. I liked the Bard video you made. It was really good to explain how the Bard worked, especially twisting. I just wish you used a higher quality setting. If you could talk to Zybeck, because I watched Zybeck's Confessor Battle Bard, which was a great video as well. His footage looks a lot better just because in his background he puts trees and things, and he doesn't do it at the edge of the map where there's a seam that cuts off the effects. So if you could figure out a way to up-res your video and try and frame the elements properly, that would be great.
So I am going to blast back on Tinnis's behalf. He's been calling for a buff to the Druid Spark the whole time.
Buff to Druid Spark.
Yeah, there's a... I'll show you.
Oh, that was the video where punching does more than Spark.
Yes, that.
Yeah, but it's also AoE. That's the reason. Like the reason it does low damage is it does AoE. So if we made it single target, then we could raise the damage. But
yeah, so because it's a chain, right? Our balance sheets, we assume that the chains are going to hit 3 targets, right? So we kind of remember this goes back to damage splitting, right? This goes all the way back to damage splitting.
You did this.
This is your fault. So if we had left damage splitting in, then when you did a single target lightning, it would have done huge damage. But
well, not huge damage, but it would have done basic damage.
It would have done 30x damage. It would have done so much damage it would hit kill him. No, but it would have done a lot of damage. And then if there was 2 or 3 targets, it would have automatically scaled down. Since we had to make that big pass and assume that it can always hit 3 targets, we set a baseline for everything. So this is the side effect of us not using damage.
And again, like if you guys don't care if you don't want to AoE, let us know or whatever. Take a vote and we can make a single target.
And on that note, can we start talking about what players can expect in the upcoming tests? Some of the content that'll come out.
So the disciplines keep getting fixed.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to keep polishing. You guys are going to keep making crazy builds. I love the videos. It gives me warm fuzzies inside to see the videos you guys make about the cool, crazy builds. Please try some of the things that haven't been tried yet. So we don't want to see everybody just make a Bard. What was the Juggernaut?
Sure.
I think that was the Zybeck build, was the Juggernaut Bard. Great build. Keep trying everything and come up with some weird, crazy combos. Because if powers aren't getting used, we need to look at them and see why they're not getting used. If a discipline is just we don't want to do that. We want to make every discipline a great discipline, right? We want everything to be great. So the only way to do that is for you guys to try new things and be like, hey, these are the ones that we think are weak. Please don't say that they're trash, because that would offend somebody.
Absolutely trash.
We go home every night and cry when you guys say that. But it would be great if you could identify the ones that are weaker than the others. And we will look at them and be like, hey, maybe we need to do this. Again, we implemented 300 powers. Some of them are just not winners.
They ain't all going to be home runs.
Yep, and we just want to make them as all good as possible so they're viable. Even if a discipline has a really strong power, I think that's also viable, right? So if there's a really strong passive and that forces or that puts it in...
There are holes, what you're basically saying.
Right.
It is a package.
Right, so that still doesn't mean that all 4 powers need to be outstanding, but they should be viable. Like if Ghost Army, right? If Ghost Army is the only good thing on Banshee, that still may be viable because you know what, Haunt is pretty good too. Anyways, enough said on that. What was your next? More future stuff?
Yep.
Okay, so again, refining disciplines. Druid is getting a big pass right now. You're gonna see go away the I can load out damage stuff into the healing tray and totally bypass the purpose of that. If you want to be a nuking druid, Scimitar Master, right? That was the whole reason we made that, to remove your healing tray and give you random healing procs. Healing is going to get better for the Cleric as well as the druid. I'm going to stop talking a lot about the Legionnaire because the Legionnaire is about to get axed in data. That's one of my projects for next week as we start to do the split on the data side. So a lot of those powers, in fact, I think the Cleric only has 2 or 3 of the old Legionnaire powers.
Something like that.
And their options. So the Cleric will also be the first class that we give them more powers than are actively loaded out into the tray. Now that we have that tech, and
Right.
it's a shame it came online late, we designed all the archetypes to have a very specific loadout. We're going to give them some options that they can now choose to go, oh, I don't like this one, I want to take this one. So they will have a little more base powers
And
than the rest.
you'll have things from your race, right?
And by that time, the first series of race stuff should be coming online. So what else? Or whatever you want to do. Oh, the Trailblazer Trailmaster series of movement speed buffs. I'm definitely looking at migrating those from everybody to very specific races. So I think Trailmaster, which is also on the Arcane Archer, which they don't have archery stuff yet because we're missing the animations. I'm hoping the animations come online in the next 4 or 5 weeks for archery to let everybody start playing with the archery stuff. But the movement speed stuff will get divvied up. So not everybody is going to have Trailblazer and or Trailmaster. Some of them are just not going to get that. And you can bypass that by taking a discipline or grouping with a bard who can provide an AoE movement buff to those who need it. What else you got?
I've just been fixing stuff, dude. Fixing stuff. My last several weeks.
That's right. The Cleric stuff is next on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
And the racial stuff. Okay. And then, of course, that's all going to dovetail into campaign worlds. And basically the campaign world will also be the adventure world. So as we're calling it, which it means the AI is going to come online and you will have something to fight other than picking on the poor newbies in Bloodbath. Okay, let's talk about that for a second, because I had to put a post in the development partners area. You guys can't help yourself. It's like there's 5 pies on the window.
Yeah. No, it's a scorpion on the back.
It's a scorpion on the back, right? Frog and the scorpion. Why did you sting me? It's in my nature. You just can't help yourself. Some people are just out there testing. Like, we have an internal rule that if somebody is just standing there and you're wailing on them, you're to desist combat. Break off.
Greg
Tapper.
And Greg is always breaking that and making me very angry.
That was only for me as a cameraman.
Well, no, it's for the rest of us as well. Because there's a lot of cases where it's like, hey, what just happened? Something
Greg
happened. No. What I mean is something broke, and we need to analyze what happened. Like, whoa, my frame rate just dropped to 5.
Like you're all tabbed or something, looking at.
I need to tab into a piece
logs
of data, so I'm just standing there AFK in world, and then Tapper will come up and just start wailing on you, and you're just standing there, and or you're naked. All right, fighting somebody who's naked, come on, really? Let them go get basic armor. Or if you're out there harvesting just to see what a rank 9 node does, let Onres and Scree out there and let them be alone for a little bit. Yeah. Again, our rule is if they just stand there, that's basically waving off, hey, I'm testing something, just kind of leave me be. Don't kill the poor newbies. They're logging in. They're trying to figure out what WASD means. Hey, what's this button? Oh, hey, here comes a big old Minotaur.
I hope he's my friend. He's not my friend. He's not my friend at all.
Oh, you just can't help yourselves. So, and it's funny too because there was some invulnerable stuff, the invulnerable shield that we're putting in to the starting fallback ultimate backup bases, and people freaked out, and it's just because you can't help yourselves. You can't help yourselves.
Well, they could. They choose not to.
I have to throw this out there. Soul Reaver said, "I promise I won't kill the poor noobs if you remove the spirit bank."
If we were
Fingers crossed behind my back.
Okay, so Spirit Bank, let's talk about that real quick, because that's a good point. That is something we put in for testing to simulate the import and export rules that we've been talking about forever. At some point, that's going to go to a specific location within the starter city, the bank, basically whatever we designate as bank. You're going to actually have to run to there to open the Spirit Bank, and that's going to be limited by the number of imports and exports you're allowed for that world, right? There'll be a little counter up there that says you can export 5 things or you can import 5 more things for this campaign, and that's it. So you're not going to see people dumping things in there. We just don't have a bank system online yet.
Right. We just want to keep it playable and fun.
Keep
for,
it playable,
for now,
but
you know?
the Spirit Bank is the front runner to what that will become in the future. So, yes. So, again, don't look at a lot of the stuff the way it's implemented now and think that that's going to be the way it is. We put it in there to stand the system up, and it's going to get modified into our vision that we've had since the beginning as we build more things.